Sabrina 70s comic, issue 60. We start out seeing three characters we've never seen before. A guy holding a suitcase calls these guys birds for some reason, and asks if they know what they're supposed to do. Why didn't people back then just say guys instead of birds? So the story's gonna start by building suspense by telling us their evil plan right away so that we'll be worried. Their plan is to make the new owners of the house think it's haunted, and then sell it again when they abandon it. That'll just spread rumors that it's haunted and make its property value plummet. Hilda's the one who bought the new house. So why did they want to buy a new house? There's no justification for this. Unless this is Sabrina's house and we're seeing how they first got it. But then there should have been a text box telling us this at the start. The realtor says to them, "I wouldn't believe those rumors about this place. That this place is haunted." Hilda likes the idea of the house being haunted, because she'd have extra company on lonesome nights. This idealism implies that most ghosts are friendly, normal people, realistically. But you'd think she'd be scared because she couldn't handle poltergeists at all. And the poltergeist would be the only type of ghost that would be known for haunting. In fact, Sabrina has to know that there's a ghost scaring committee that forces ghosts to scare people for their job. That's probably stupid in Casper too. The point is, this reaction is confusing. I'd expect them to just be arrogant that they can handle any ghost because they're witches. Their only problem is that ghosts are invisible, so they couldn't imagine them to zap them away, but they could just, well, if they're intangible too, they couldn't throw stuff on them. If they know where they are, they could surround them with a force field and warp the force field away. The short bad guy is told to look through the peephole and tells them how the ants react to their fake spirit. I wonder how they're gonna fake it. Also, wouldn't they end up seeing that they're witches? And why can't I be told these bad guys' names? Not that they deserve names if they all have the same flat jerk personality. Zelda sees floating clothes and thinks that it's nice that there's a spirit in the house. I guess they need to actually get hurt by a ghost to believe that's an outright evil poltergeist. They're used to magical things. Hilda thinks the spirit looks lonely, as I'm wondering why she's not asking the spirit to show himself and talk to her right away, and why she doesn't realize it's a fake ghost if it doesn't. She should say he's just shy, because I don't blame her for thinking that mortals could never fake ghosts. She's not as used to their technology. Zelda says she should give the ghost extra company, and she zaps up some more floating clothes. The short guy's genre savvy enough to not bother telling his friend what he saw because he'd never believe him. In fact, he doesn't believe it. Which at least explains why he agrees with the idea of trying to scare them with the upside down bit when they're witches. He probably thinks he hallucinated. And yet he's not freaking out about his health. No one does in this comic. Hilda says their lamp turned upside down, and Zelda laughs and says that it's probably Sabrina practicing her magic in the next room. So she shows her what pros can do, and turns the whole house upside down. What if the neighbors see? Or someone driving by? I guess she assumes that anyone who would see that would get their memory of that erased by a witch spy on the Ferdella. The short guy grabs a broom and gets flown, and it crashes. Hilda and Zelda, who are sharing a bed because they're such close sisters, hear the crash upstairs. And Zelda says she'll send George up, who's a ghost trapped in a bottle. Why is he trapped in a bottle if he's a nice obedient guy? George came out of complete nowhere. She tells George to tell the noisy spirits upstairs that they're very tired. So George the ghost tells the fat bad guy to knock it off, calling Zelda his mistress. I don't think the writer knows what that means. Isn't a mistress the woman a man cheats on his wife with? And how does he know to go to him? He never saw him before. Anyways, the fat guy makes me giggle by saying, "Feet, don't stop!" Well, I see the funny side of him running away. Though logically, he'd never break a house window that easily. And he collapsed bleeding from the shards of glass going into him. A week later, the realtor is scared that Hilda and Zelda have spotted him, and Hilda says she's very disappointed that the house is no longer haunted. In the next story, after Della once again complains about reports that Sabrina's a good witch from her spies and goes to see Sabrina, Sabrina's at Harvey's basketball game. Like an episode of the 70s cartoon, and wants to use her magic to cheat so he'll win. He's in the basketball team too? Can he juggle 3 different sports teams at once? Is this another universe, or did he get fired off a team? I loved the other times this kind of story was done, so I'm looking forward to this. But once again, I don't like that Sabrina doesn't have thought bubbles for spells, because I'm wondering why no one can hear her and realize she's the one doing all this. She says hand out passes, which leads to Harvey handing out movie and concert passes in a basketball game. The coach tells him to stop and forget what he told him, and tells him to feed someone the ball. This is less interesting because it's based on what the coach is saying, and not based on actual basketball terminology, I think. I giggled when he said, "Harvey, this is no time for clowning." Harvey doesn't know what came over him, and somehow, Sabrina thinks Harvey's doing well, when she should be close enough to hear him yelling angrily. He tells Harvey to go freeze the ball. Is this actual basketball terminology? If so, it's stupid. So the ball gets surrounded by ice, exposing magic pretty obviously. I could understand if the only thing Dell was mad at Sabrina for was exposing magic. Kind of. She could demand money every time so that she could save money on paying her memory-erasing spies. Instead, she's mad that she's good. The coach chases Harvey, and somehow Sabrina thinks he wants to congratulate him. Wouldn't he just be terrified of Harvey because he'd think he'd had magical powers? Already the story's at the end, so I guess this was the worst, most underwhelming version of this kind of story. Because that's it. The story ends with Sabrina actually getting that Teenage Witch of the Year award, which was mentioned in an earlier issue, so for once there was continuity, though it was probably just an accidental coincidence, because it says teen this time, not teenage. I thought she wouldn't get it, because there are a lot of witches that would be more evil than her. In the comedy page, Zelda says in Hilda's bed that she can't sleep with Sabrina's dance party going on that her extremely lenient parental figures let her have. Don't most teenagers need their parents out of the house to have any chance of a party? That was the case in the 90s sitcom. Hilda fogs up the place, but instead they want to stay longer because they think it's like a real disco place now. That's the only reference to disco I've seen so far. And this is a comic in the 70s. In the next story, Harvey sure is polite to not even comment on the name of Little Lucifer, who's Sabrina's relative that she promised would get to play in the park. Harvey says he's weird looking in front of him. Then why didn't he make fun of his name too? He says he's small, helpless looking, and doesn't look bright here. Why is he saying this? He's never like this. Because the kid snatches the ball away from him, he turns the ball into a snake. I guess he's just named that for the intimidation factor, because witches want that for no reason. I guess witch pride is the only reason why he was told he was a witch at such a young age when it was clearly going to be a disaster waiting to happen. Why is he asking why that kid's screaming like that? I guess Harvey was too busy kissing Sabrina to see what happened. After Harvey offers to keep his eyes on him for Sabrina, she insists on looking at her instead in a convincing romantic moment. Though she makes it obvious when she tells him not to take his eyes off her for a second. And it turns out Little's about to be tripped and shoved. He casts a spell to make their necks grow temporarily, and they scream from that terrifying experience. It's so hard to take seriously that a mortal like Harvey isn't commenting on Little's name at all, and yet insults everything else. After he pushes his luck, calling him ugly even more, the story ends with Harvey running into a tree that was made to grow in front of him. It also looks like the tree's in his legs. The first story is about Hilda getting a new house, which I have to assume is the one she had the whole series, or this is another universe, because there's no consequences to this. The realtors have a dumb plan to make her think the house is haunted and get new ones to buy it, even though bad word of mouth would spread eventually. But out of nowhere, it turns out Hilda and Zelda like the floating clothes fake ghost because they want company and it's not bothering them like a poltergeist would. It still makes no sense that they wanted it to be haunted before they realized how harmless the ghosts would be. And the bad guys freak out at witnessing them use magic and give up. So that was entertaining. The second story is another use of a plot where Sabrina fails to help Harvey win a sports game. And I liked it, but I thought the joke where he tried to feed someone the ball was too weak and distracted from the good other puns that actually revolve around basketball terminology. It's not like we saw Harvey forcing his opponent to have the ball in his mouth, like I thought. And Sabrina should have known she was screwing up, but at least Della gave her an award at the end. The third story is distractingly annoying because I'm wondering why the writer had so little restraint as to name the character Little Lucifer just because he's a witch. Esmeralda's a better name. And Harvey was out of character by insulting him so much in front of him. Why did it take so long for him to be punished for it? At least it made sense that he was getting revenge on all those kids because they were bullying him. I wish it was at least explained, like it's because of his ugly appearance. But there's no excuse for making their necks grow and terrifying them like that. It immediately struck me as confusingly hypocritical that the guy who took his basketball from him called him a punk. Is he used to beating up punks? Because he was just being a bully, so wouldn't he only focus on weaker targets and not target punks? So he wasn't one.